podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead Podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. You are preparing and about to and going to experience Good Brothers. So, do what we always ask you. Take the best part for yourself and enjoy. Peace. I'm Jesse.
What's happening?
What's happening, man? It's a day. It's the time that we are together, and I'm feeling all right. How are you doing?
It's interesting right now. I mean, you look at what we kind of talked about last week around broadly, or last time rather, broadly with wellness and stuff like that, and you just recognize that being well in this kind of time is unlike trying to be well at any other kind of time. But that considered, I'm good. No complaints.
I hear you. Yeah. So thinking of that, so two things came to mind today. So a couple things, but I wanted to start with is the NBA is although I thought the Lakers would find a way to wrap it up last night, but hey man, props to Miami for toughing it out, find a way to eke out a victory.
Danny Green, but that was man.
Oh yeah, man, he gonna be thinking, but that's old man legs though. Yes, you ain't as young as you used to be, so it's a little bit short.
Yeah,
just a hair. Just a hair short. You know what I'm saying? You wide open, top of the key, looking right at it, and you just, you like, damn, I felt, man, I thought no, I've never been as good a shooter as he is. However, I as I improved, my arc of shooting was inverse to my physical capacity, meaning I got much better at shooting later in life.
Right. No, that's true.
Because I worked on it, but then I started to say, oh man, look at this not working. I need to stay focused. I got to really lock in. But anyway, but the thing I thought was remarkable, sort of about in the midst of what we're dealing with, for all intents and purposes, the bubble appears to have found a way to work, right?
Yeah,
and it is. It got me thinking about one. I mean, there's a lot of things I think that are probably highly interesting about the whole bubble and this idea of sort of isolating yourself, sort of within a grouping, a clique, even if it was not as a social entity, not the NBA is definitely not a clique. It's it's a business, and it's
right?
People who's professionals and
it's an enterprise,
right. That, but from a if you look at it from the perspective of a set of corporate entities, their employees, ancillary entities and industries that depend on them or attached to their, they have a mutually beneficial relationship, as i.e. the media, the sports and apparel industry, the entertainment industry at large, as this is happening on a Disney campus, right?
Right.
You have a confluence of things that found a way to create a space to keep something going. And my own 2 cents, just for those who are like, I mean, why would this? It's a game and it's not that important. And I guess it's not. Supposedly, we could say, but what we think is important is what is important. And if those folks that wanted to work, and most of us would, I'm not mad at watching it when I had a chance to. It's like, yeah, why not? If y'all can put it together. I mean, this is what y'all would have been doing anyway, right? Like if there was no global pandemic. So if we like the moment we have a global pandemic, personally making certain concessions to the circumstance, like, not necessarily going out for a high quality cocktail on a Friday afternoon is one thing to personally sacrifice. Is another thing, if your entire livelihood is constructed around high quality cocktails, you might be a little bit more reluctant to easily walk away, right?
Right.
Which folks in the restaurant and entertainment business are dealing with and experiencing. So I was thinking about the bubble, and it got me thinking, like, how did they pull this off? Which appears, like I said, appears, unless some scandal comes out, without, somebody violating the bubble in a way that infected, the most skilled basketball players on the planet in a giant cluster of coronavirus. So, I just wanted to get some of your thoughts around that,
so
and then implications of it.
Number one, from a business perspective, it is clear that the NBA has much higher quality of professionals and leadership. You see this over and over again. You see it in how they responded to the racial upheaval and the social racial uprisings in this country. You even see it how they're responding to the bubble versus the virtual kind of bubbles that the NFL and Major League Baseball are doing. The NHL, kind of exists in a bubble anyway. Right. So the fact of what they did the East and the West, which I thought was kind of interesting. Sending folks to the East and the West Coast of Canada, because where else you gonna send them? Because America got COVID. But like, I think about it, like, they're like, where should we go? We should probably just go to Canada. Good idea, everybody. But yeah, so I just think that's number one. Adam Silver is just a hell of a leader and executive, right? Leading a global enterprise and figuring out a way to take a global enterprise and put it in a bubble. And generally speaking, still keep and maintain interest in the sport. That's number one. I think you also see a higher degree of cooperation between the Players Association and the NBA. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to frame that in the kind of workers, executives context, I think it's, kind of a huge thing. And then frankly, I think the actual leadership of the players, and that just could be first, really. But I think the leadership of the players is extremely high, because at the end of the day, as old black women would say, you can't keep nobody don't want to be kept, right? And so you can't keep nobody in the bubble if they don't want to be kept in the bubble, aka Lou Williams, right? like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't keep nobody don't want to be kept. So the fact that you had the discipline of hundreds of people, right? Largely young black men, right? Let's be real. Who by and large kept the level of discipline to be able to do this and carry this off. It's a testament to them, which I think sometimes can get lost. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's the whole situation. I mean, there's a question. Not that much the question, but the infrastructure existing, right? Mm-hmm. So you have a sports campus that was built, already existing, right? Built by Disney to basically to house giant youth and whatever have you sporting events, in these tournaments from if you want to get into the sort of that beyond the NBA. Before the NBA needed this during the global pandemic, there was already an existing market for a giant campus filled with courts and hotels and adjoining facilities that could be cordoned off, right? So you think about that aspect, but also the I think it's a thing of this our society that there's a lot of things when some group of people really want to get something done on something, they just get it done. Like they find a way to put it together.
Right.
And the idea often that we have as a public conversation is like, oh well, we don't have this to do that, we don't have this, we don't have the tools, we don't have the facilities, and then sometimes it's just like, well, if you got the will and and appropriate motivation, you tend to find a way to get certain stuff done. You know what I'm saying? Like even if it's ham-handed, you know what I'm saying? If you look at the way, I mean, to this point, it seems like a little, I guess, outside of these recent spat, we'll see how far this outbreak goes with the NFL. Where they, especially early, it seemed like they were just like, yeah, we just kind of not trying not to talk about it. And once people say they're going to show up, we just going to kind of just do it.
Right.
And, and then it seemed like they actually did maybe had a little bit better structure or whatever. But then it's all contingent on people adhering, to whatever protocols are in place. And if people are lax, people don't really, think they're that important, like the one, I guess that was towards the end there, the one Houston player who might have brought somebody into the bubble, you know what I'm saying, in violation of the bubble access.
Right.
Right. And, it's a, like,
but I want to touch on that. Because these guys are used to having everything they want. And generally speaking, most of them have been showered with attention in some way since at least they were 17 or 18 years old. Right? Yeah. Because, the vast majority of them have been really good at basketball for a long time. Yeah. Right? This is the small percentage of them who just got good their senior year or something, right? Right. But they still played at a college and got a scholarship, right? So they still were amongst the best players in the country, even at that. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Even if you went to Wright State, no problem with Wright State here, but if you went to Wright State and you were the 8th player until your senior year, and then you became a Mid-American Conference All-Star, right? You still went to a Division I school to play basketball. Mm-hmm. You still were amongst the top 10% of kids who graduate from high school who are offered a scholarship, right? Yeah. So you've been really important for a long time in our culture. And when I mean the culture, I don't mean this whole for the culture thing, which I think we should have a conversation about at some juncture. But in American culture, in American pop culture, and in sports culture, these guys also, some of them try to live like rappers and all this kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So they go out all the time, they do all this stuff. So again, they get these kind of guys on the same page, right? To see the bigger picture and not violate it, right? And not deal with what the Raiders just dealt with the NFL fining everybody on the damn team, right? It does show that, like you said, that level, if we want to get something done, right? If there is a shared vision and shared self-interest, right? Which is often a challenge with a lot of different things that go on, right? Because there's not truly a shared self-interest and it's not a shared vision. It's usually a vision that one person has, or it is said deemed socially acceptable to have, then other people just say, okay, well, I guess I'll do it, right? Right. They go, well, it appears that this is either I'm going to ride with it for the time because it may be advantageous for me to ride with it for now, even if I'm not really sold, or it's fully transactional. And it's like, well, I don't really like, my sandwiches that way, but we're going to make them this way until I get a window where I can put my sandwich in, do it the way I like to do it. And, and I think that there's a lesson in there too, and it'll probably be overlooked within this, that these individuals were able to be successful with, given these circumstances to follow through, to
get folks on the same page for most folks to take it seriously, serious enough, even if you bristled at the conditions and the space and place. I mean, I hear the external voices that go like, how you gonna tell people they can't do this and do that? And it's like, yeah, all of that kind of talk is great for your own personal life and what you do, in between the walls and parameters, maybe you and your front door and just you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a part of if you acknowledging and understanding that your success is a part of an interconnected set of activity, right? Like you can't do what you do to take care of yourself or to earn your living or what have you without the 15 other dudes on the team, the coaches, the training staff, a facility to play in, people to watch. That people go, well, I'm not in the sports, right? But if you're we think about like how the concepts of the bubble and even like how do some of those things apply or look like you think about like schools, right? And you have people who are trying to figure out how can I get my kids some social interaction so that they're not just even if they're on only online, that they're actually like around some other kids in a way that we see as a regular human way to be. Typically, right? And it's much harder to get the collective agreement on like how we would put that together because people are we have family networks, we have our personal connections, but in terms of a lot of things in our day-to-day life, we sort of are in and out in a more transactional way that it's hard to have that shared vision. It's hard to have the like, well, maybe we could have thought about that we wanted, especially with the elementary kids, is when I think about that. Hey, we at some point we want to have this young person in a setting where they can really have a robust learning experience. How can we, for the sake of that word, bubbleize the potential relationship between that teacher and these kids and the families to connect? Like it becomes a much more daunting set of tasks and shared motivations. That I think we could take for granted how actually hard in a public, open society that we purport to be to actually agree on certain, minutia of unity. Like it's like man, like because a lot of people, I can see people just going like, "There's no way." Like I like my kid's teacher, but I don't like my kid's teacher that much, or I don't know what I mean. Like, I don't like them enough to like reorganize my life around them and the other kids in their class so that what I mean. Like I think most people would be like, "Nah, I'm not doing all that." Even if that might have been what we would have needed to do to have kids in the classroom every day,
right,
as opposed to learning from home and all this other stuff.
Well, it's kind of like not to go too far into it, but it's this idea that I've been grappling with around like civic infrastructure, right? And like true civic, and I don't mean voting, although that can be included as a part of the contribution to the broader public good, right? And in this society, in American society in particular, I'm painting a broad brush here for a reason. Our country sells individualism like none other, right? Like we actually have a thing where you can go on the internet and make shoes just for you that no one else has, right? You can make a sandwich the way only you want it, right? And you dig out when you go to other countries and be like, can you add to take this? Or they look at you like, do you want the food or not? Right? Like we're making food. This is how the food comes. If you don't want that because you have an allergy, don't eat that food. Eat another food that doesn't have the allergy that you have, right? And so because of our economic system, I would submit to you that it has impacted our perspective of our civic infrastructure. And so you made a really interesting point when it talks about reorganizing my life for the good of someone else, right? What am I willing to not do in the short or long term for the collective good? Because what is truly my relationship to the collective good? Again, going back to this point, it's economics, but I think it does come a kind of a broader thing of like, we do basketball together, so we are willing to reorganize our lives, right? create a life in a bubble in order to do the thing that we all care about. But if we don't agree on the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then even with today's reality in the 1 to 40, right? If we don't agree, then all the ideas of coming together are always going to be limited, right? They're always going to be extremely transactional. And we're always going to find a break in the action because you didn't have an agreement and then you didn't kind of go over the agreement over time to say, hey, are we still on the same page, right? But again, that's why I give the credit to the players and credit to the leadership that really said, listen, here's the big picture. Here's how we're trying to do this thing for the good of the enterprise, right? And to your point, I do think how you bring that down, because it shows that in our schools and in our communities, we don't have those agreements, right? We exist as really separate people who come together for a time.
Yeah.
Right? We're not like together. You know what I mean? We're just in the same space, I guess, to use this, the to make the distinction. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So all your kids is in the same space, but you ain't together. And you and I both know, you really see it when you go to report card night or like go see your teachers, and you realize, like, you know, everyone goes, hey, how you doing? How's your kid doing? But you don't really know each other besides that. You go to hell home. Right? Like you come in, and this is talking about people like you and I who have relative privilege in this context, right?
Yeah.
Still, hey, how you doing? All right, they're gonna do this together. Okay, sounds great. Bam, right?
I'm out of here. Like, yo, it's kind of ready to roll, right? Unless that kid is like your kid and their kid are like really friends, like they're really buddies, and they kick it. You don't know the people. Oh, nice to meet you. Oh, you work over there? Oh, that's all right. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And so
all right, man, I'm out of here, man.
The privilege is that a lot of us share space. We'll be like, oh, okay, you work with this person, or you saw this person at the co-op, or you know what I mean? Like this happened with this. I saw you on the news, right? So think about in other spaces where literally a school is the last chance destination for parents. People like, yo, I send my kid here and hope they get the best shot possible.
Right. I'm not
involved. No.
I'm not like in a long-term longitudinal relationship with this institution.
Not with this space, no, man. And so to your point, like really, I think we have uncovered a lot of the civic malaise, you know, that plagues us, and then it comes out in real time, right? So this is not just like a theoretical concept here. This is not like a theoretical one. We all love each other. We do things that that can get each other sick. We do things that can kill each other because we don't give a damn enough about each other of our civic agreement. You know what I'm saying? Like it's practical. It's not theoretical. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that, you know, they've done a great job. And I think in that I wanted to talk a little bit about like LeBron actually.
Yeah.
And so I've really been thinking a little bit about him and his career and this eternal conversation of him versus Jordan. And, you know, you'll have the debaters on all sides who will debate around those two versus each other, which I think has a lot to do with like when you were born, the time you started watching television, was basketball on television, right? Because I think basketball came on television with like 79.
I think right? it was on sometimes. I think it was still sort of tape delayed until
it was tape delayed. That's what it was. It was tape delayed. Yeah, it was tape delayed till 81. I mean, really till Magic and Bird, right? It was tape delayed.
Yeah.
So your perspective of who was the best player has everything has a lot to do with that as well, right? Of who you saw play and who you were allowed to see play at what times, right? One of the reasons I think a lot of players from the West Coast that were on West Coast teams don't get a lot of the credit they deserve because the East Coast didn't see them.
Oh yeah.
Right. So when you talk about players, I always think about like Fat Lever and like Mark Aguirre and what's my man, other dude from the Denver Nuggets, Fat Lever. Oh, Adrian Dantley, like
Alex English,
right? A lot of these guys, amazing, right? But you never saw Denver play.
Yeah.
So you don't know how good they was anyway, right? Fat Lever put up 40. He's 5'8", put up 40 on you. Shooting from damn near half court when that wasn't cool, right? So, but think about this, like, this debate. And so what I have come to is the thing of kind of Jalen Rose talked about it a little bit on ESPN the other day, and I thought about it a little deeper. LeBron James has had the best playing career of any player in the NBA ever. I didn't say he was the best player to play, right? He's had the best career. He has been to 10 of 11 straight finals, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if he didn't win any of them. It meant he was on one of the top two teams, right? For the last decade.
Right. Regardless of who the rest of the team was composed.
Regardless of who the rest of the team was, right?
Yeah.
Of the decade. And so when you think about what that means, it's his career. It's not the player. And I think it's an interesting thing that we focus on this idea of the player, right? So we all say Jordan because we saw what Jordan did and we saw, who he beat and we saw the three-peats and things like that. But he was there. He did the most amazing shit we've ever seen. And then he wasn't. If that makes sense, right? Like when he went to the Bullets, they were trash, right?
Yeah.
Before that, they were good, but they couldn't beat people. They won 6 championships. And then, you know what I mean? It's not obviously not like a supernova, but it's just a different thing. He clearly was the most prolific player, right? In the sense of the ability to win. It doesn't always mean he had the best career. And I think we can't get past that, right? We can't get past the conversation of the person versus the career. And so LeBron, for me, and again, we're also talking about a man that's 35, 36 years old now?
Yep.
And is literally, generally speaking, the best player on the court at 36 years old. Right? Besides if AD's on the court with him, right? I mean, you could debate. But literally, 90% of the time that he is on the court, he is the best player on the court at this age. Again, it doesn't make him the best individual player, right? It doesn't mean that he is going to give you 60. It doesn't, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean he will always will his team to the championship, right? But I think we have created this very all or nothing vantage point in people's careers, which downplay who they actually were, right? Because then it becomes, if it wasn't Jordan or Kobe, it's nobody.
Yeah, and the whole thing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the whole debate, and I know there's a part of my mind and my I should say my heart that's looks at the Jordan experience from the perspective of like the team I rooted for seemed to make the most boneheaded decisions in regards to beating this dude. I'm like, yo, look, what do you right? So I don't like. There's a framing of the world where you can go like, well, his sheer will and the force and power of his basketballness, led to these victories. And it's like, but I remember that game, and if this dummy, if you just do this, right? It doesn't work out that way, but it worked out the other way, and there's a place and a space with the way people frame it, and especially when people frame it where they go like Jordan, Kobe. I go, oh, you like guards? Yes. Okay.
Right.
That's okay. I understand. Like I just stopped talking then because I go, okay, all right. Then or I razz, I buzz the tower and go like, well, you just like little guys. comparatively. You know what I'm saying? Not Jordan was 6'6", he was, and the Kobe was 6'. They was both legit big ass humans.
Right.
However, in the perspective of the game, you know, the dynamics of your size and ability, you know, there is a relationship there. And
Right.
the thing that the analogy or the thing that I most think about even with this discussion is sort of like, why are we so dedicated to, as apparently as a community, to sort of like acting like what's happening in front of you is not happening?
Right.
Right. Like, and finding a way to reason it away, or, you know, it's almost like, well, he's so good and that's why. And you know, like and the rest of these guys are not good. So that's, you know, so therefore, ergo, he doesn't deserve, you know, credit or similar credit, you know, for the achievement, right? It is truly a unique thing to have an individual be in 10 of the last 11 finals. Like, it just, in any walk of life, if you were the person that keeps being like, man, every year, man, whatever movie he ends up being the best movie, right?
Exactly.
Like we would be like, man, what an actor! like, man, Denzel every time he show up, you know what I'm saying? He out here Denzeling it. You know what I'm saying? He start with the I and look here. You know, he start doing them voices and making the faces and stuff. You know what I'm saying? And you be like, oh, Denzel's on one. I'm with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we would just, you know, and I understand sports are competitive and people have, like, you know, it's encouraged within the culture of sport to like pick the persons you like, you know, above other people, and this is the best one. And but there's a degree to it of it to me that, you know, I've made this, I make a leap to the way people assess black men in a public space.
Okay.
That I find just sort of like, there can only be one black man that we really like. We can't like them both. Like, we can't be like, man, look at the black pool of genius that these individuals have emerged from with their skills and talents, and then, you know, through their experiences and the people that they've had the fortune to engage with, they've then taken those talents to another level. And like, man, just love him for what it is. It's like, nah, I need only one of them can I really like, and the other one, he's not as good. He stinks, or I hate him. You know
right.
I mean?
Or there's a chink in his armor, right? And usually the chink in his armor is defined by this like win at all cost mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the same stuff we decry in other spaces. So it's almost like the same mentality. I mean, Michael Jordan, I guess, is becoming a better human being now later in his life, right? Like, you know, it appears that, you know, he is becoming a more kind of engaged human, especially around black folks. And, you know, I mean, absent his speech at the Hall of Fame where he trashed everybody. But let's just go and say, let's assume that he's becoming a better human being. Like, he won and was not a good human being to a lot of people. So do you judge that as better than someone who seems to have been a better human for a longer time?
Right.
Like LeBron James has been a better human, right? If on the basketball court he has passed the ball or he has done different things, do you see that as different because he did not have a killer's mentality? When then if you go outside and you get somebody who's got a killer's mentality all the time, you say, "Ooh, no, man, that's not good character." You have to have a broader view of what you think. What you cherish is what you chronicle, and is what you end up asserting to people is the standard. And so, to your point about black men, they can both have done something different. It's like the idea, to take it further back, of the idea of like Du Bois and Garvey. You know what I mean? Or Du Bois and
Booker
T. Washington, right? Like, why would you have to choose? Both of them said extremely relevant things, right? you don't have to choose. You don't have to choose Jordan versus LeBron because they're both giving you something fundamentally different. And when we do this, we totally forget about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Oh yeah, we just act like that he a dude that played like 27 years of basketball
and is
basically.
Still the leading scorer, if I remember. And that's is the leading scorer in NBA history. So even the idea that we're having a conversation and we're saying, on some level, isn't the best player the player that scored the most? If we're following this logic of the best player has the most championships, right?
Yeah, which again we throw that out the window with Bill Russell, who out of 13 years he played, his team won 11. Now I know there was less teams, and that I know the whole thing. People say he still, of all the players available, his team won 11 of the 13 years he had a chance, and denied Wilt Chamberlain, who was probably one of the most amazing athletes in the history of athletics,
right?
From winning as much
multiple times, right? And so, I think the conversation, and not to be get quote unquote too deep, but the conversation really reflects our inability to think in different dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
It reflects our inability to see things as like, okay, if someone's like, man, who my favorite rapper is? My favorite rapper is Jay-Z, right? Because I would say Jay-Z is kind of like LeBron, right? In the sense that Jay-Z has probably had the most prolific recording career, right? Of any rapper. He has produced, if you look at, again, albums selling and being famous, he's produced them for over around 20 years, right? Yeah. I mean, the last ones have reflected that he's getting to be an old man because time is undefeated. It's undefeated. Time is undefeated, man. Yeah. But versus your idea of, say, if someone uses Rakim. Rakim did not have the best career. He just indicated one of the highest qualities of doing the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
At a young age, right? He did the thing at a level before anyone else did it to recognize. You don't have to you don't have to choose. You know what I mean? Yeah. We can argue that someone performed at the highest level versus, I would argue, Jay-Z never performed at a level as high as him, or a level of Cool G Rap, or frankly, a level of a Black Thought, but he has been consistent. He is always, to the point, he has always been in the finals, or he's been in the finals for a long time, right? Other people have performed higher, but they haven't been in the finals, right? And so you can just acknowledge it. But I think for me, it was this idea of like, no, LeBron has had the best career of anyone. Yeah. And then for me, it made it different, right? It was like, oh, okay, you know what? Let me open my head up to see it differently. So just wanted to add that.
All right. Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add to that is I just think about it that in terms of, and I think it actually jives with the idea of the best career is in terms of the potential to be, within the context of a profession or a skill. I don't know if anyone has maximized the potential the way he has. Mm-hmm. Right, where it was like people were like, oh man, this kid, he's like he's tall, he's like got great athleticism. He seems to be like, because it's the it's the universal sort of trope of youth sports and our community, especially of the last 3 decades of young Black men, of like, oh man, you remember what's his name from, or the person, like, you fill in the blank from wherever you at in America, and it was a dude. He was the greatest basketball player y'all ever seen in your neighborhood or your community or your town or whatever. And everyone thought like he should be in the league, man. He going to the league. He gonna go to college. And then in terms of basketball, it ain't happened. Right. For any myriad of reasons. You know what I'm saying? Right. For any myriad of reasons. And then even watching the game, I was watching with our good brother, and it's always just fascinating me if you even watch a basketball game of professional athletes, where someone who you knew, if you and him showed up at a local gym, just to shoot some hoop, put some balls in the cup, so to speak. He probably be lights out better than you. But within the context of their peers, if you had, you'll see moments where it's like, look, I know you've been touching a basketball since you were like 8 years old. How do you suddenly not know how to shoot a jump shot or make a decent pass, Markieff Morris?
Oh,
or
man.
whichever Morris you are.
Oh, man.
Them two brothers, hey, man, much respect and love to them. But what it showed me between the Clippers series and them, that both of them at the moment of the most intensity, they get a little, the brain gets a little.
Somebody made an interesting point. And this is a testament to how good LeBron is. LeBron, the current Lakers, if you take LeBron off the team, they are the 2017 Pelicans.
They are.
Right?
Yeah.
Take LeBron off this team.
Yeah.
They're the Pelicans. They are the 20th. They are the 17th, between 17th and 20th team in the NBA.
Yeah.
With an amazing player, AD.
Right, and no one to connect the rest of the dots.
Because your point exactly. When you have those guys, you drive, Danny Green has an open shot, series over, LeBron's the champion. He misses, Markieff picks it up and wants to throw it down to AD versus hitting a 15-footer.
Well, but the other thing is, if he just leaves his feet on, like, it's like the mental, if he just makes a decent pass, like, the idea was right, but the way he did it was like, I get this ball out my hand. Like,
right.
But you're like it's so, like, I think it's hard for people to realize, like, even when within the contextual space, someone who is much more, who plays basketball for a living can make the same tense, your mind, your adrenaline's up, like, bad decision,
right,
that a person who is not a professional would make, and look like they don't, like, you look like you're not good at basketball, but right. You're with, like, you're with the best basketball players that exist, right? And so when people are successful in that space, I think it's like, we need to think about, like, wait a minute, it's hard to maintain being really good as everyone around you is also being really good and better and better. And, like, there's a relative relationship. And to watch, like I said, I was like, what does he do? What are you, dog? Put your feet on. Why did you jump and pass like that? What kind of weird, like, but it's a mental thing. It is hard to make the right decision under pressure over and over again. You know what I mean? And
he clearly is not one of the ones that goes and meditates and deals with mindfulness.
No, absolutely not.
And visualization. He's clearly not the guy that comes to the.
I mean, like, that was crazy, but the and then when it gets to, and I didn't go look, just because, one, I was hanging out, and then two, I was like, because it's like, when it goes bad, like, I'm sure there was a, see, he should have took a jumper. Kobe would have took a jump shot instead of passing it out of what, if you look at the video, was turning into a 5 team. There was all 5 Heat defenders are in the shot, like, as he's dribbling towards the basket, right? Kobe would have took that shot anyway, right? Like, that's, this is there's the psychology of it. And I just, for people, I in my mind, Lakers will win the next game and this will all be over. And, for that, and for him, LeBron as an individual, I think, he will play. I think he'll probably play another 3 or 4 years. And I wouldn't put out, old man LeBron, you know what I mean? Like, old man Logan, post rear end posting people out of the 3-point line, throwing passes. I wouldn't put it past him. You know what I'm saying? To still be effective, even if, as he gets close to 40. And props to him. So, escaping the bubble. So, yeah, we got time. So, one other thought, and maybe we could table this to come back to it, because the bubble got me thinking about. I was watching A Different World.
Okay.
And I, the funny thing about for those that don't know TV from our age, the shows, once you got to watch them, there was no channel to ever watch the show again unless it happened to be on syndication somewhere. So like you might see something and then never ever see it again. Right? We're like now we were like, oh, we could find that on something. It's on Netflix, it's on Prime, it's on this, it's on that. Right. But 30 years ago, if you missed an episode of the fifth episode of the second season or something,
it was gone.
It was gone. It was gone for all time. You know what I'm saying? So, but like, watching the show got me thinking about a different bubble, right? And the bubble of sort of the college experience, you know what I'm saying? And sort of the bubble that the space that was created by that show in the way it depicted, young black people in an in an educational space, just like having sitcom-y problems. I like the girl don't like me. I like the boy don't like me. I like the person, but now they like me, but I got this other thing happening. I forgot I took speed, which was a big theme. And I mean, I don't think they had a different world episode with that, but illicit drug use, drug dealers, crimes, but I'm watching the show and I'm like, man, they was talking about a lot of stuff. Right? They talked about date rape. They talked about gentrification. They had episodes about like drug usage, and they had episodes about at least as far as I'm thinking I'm up to season 4 now. I mean, I've picked up from where I was at somewhere else in the past. But I was evaluating sort of the way what you get from the media or the entertainment that you engage in, right? And sort of the ability to get some of those, to the degree that it did, attempt to like sort of talk about even the complexities of sort of like Black class and people with different social expectations, people moving through the same space, but with much different intensity and energy. And it just, I was just sort of wondering, like, what do you think there's a way to have that sort of story, be, I don't know, back in our media world at this time? Like, would they even attempt it?
Yeah, so I think, for one thing, I'm say something, and this shouldn't be something that's kind of sketchy to say, but controversial. But this idea of throwing, you hear the baby throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Mm-hmm. This should be clear, but I'm not saying I support anything Bill Cosby did in any kind of way with women in any way.
Absolutely.
But the idea that you don't watch A Different World, or the idea that you don't watch the benefits, especially what the Cosby Show men have represented to Black folks at that time, is actually missing out on some context of Black people. So that's one. And that there were more people who made Different World than just Bill Cosby. Right? Yeah. Like, he did not write it himself, think it through, pick the actors, right? Like, there were psychologists and a whole bunch of other people who were involved in the making of that show. I think we actually have the opposite challenge now. Because before we had this almost like we're using a place, and Black colleges, I think, are unique in this. Historically, Black colleges, universities are unique in this, that is actually a place where you start to see the fullness of the Black experience in a way that you may not even see it in a city. You definitely don't see it in the military, right? Mm-hmm. But you see the fullness of the Black experience. You get people from the South. You get people from the North. You get people who never really saw grass till they got there. You got people who got there on a bus sponsored by the church, just dropped them off and said, hey, go to college, right? You got people who've had 4 generations that went to, Howard or Spelman or Fisk, right? Mm-hmm. You just have a range of people who show up on a Black college campus. To me, that's why they're so important, even for those of us who did not attend an HBCU. to me, it is in our enlightened self-interest to make sure that they flourish.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they don't flourish, where do Black people who often don't get this full experience, right? There's Black people who've never met a rich Black person besides seeing people on TV, like in athletics.
Mm-hmm.
I think Black people can't be rich if they don't do a sport,
right,
or rap. They've never met a Black person who's from so deep in a rural place that like all their family are farmers and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's an experience that is still really important for us to have an experience. And I think what's happening now in our different media worlds is we're having so many different conversations. We're not having one that shows the complexity of our communities interacting with each other. Because if you're now, understandably, you got communities who feel like our experience hasn't been shown, right? But you might not have some of the other elements, right? Because you're trying to focus on, rightly so, championing that perspective. Right? I think in some ways Insecure tries to be a place that shows that, because I think also in some ways South Central LA, Baldwin Hills, Inglewood is a place that kind of reflects a lot of stuff going on in the Black community, but not as much clearly as a college campus. So I think, I think it's a thing of like, now would you be trying to use one example of a broader context of the complexity of the Black community versus now people will say, I don't have to watch your kind of perspective of Black people because I can go see what I want to see, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's very similar to your point of if you watch like Spike Lee movies or movies that focus on the college campus, you always had the guy from New York, right? You always had the guy from New York with sneakers and a haircut, right?
Yeah.
You just always had that person because people knew that was a big person, that was a big theme on Black college campuses. And you can extend that to just like the urban experience, right? And then by extension, the town gown issues that they show. Like, you just have these things that are still real challenges. So it was a really, really good and I think important show. And I'll stop here. It also showed people what was possible, right? There were some people who were watching television and got to see a conversation around a historically Black college or university who may have never had access.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was and is important in the psychic context of our experience, in a way that I don't know if it rings quite as loud now. Now I think we take a lot of stuff for granted, of like homecomings and, like a larger voice around the experience of people who went to HBCUs, but I don't know if we're connecting it as much to the possibilities of what HBCUs represent for the Black community and for Black people who may not have had access to that. And you and I have both had access to those things, so that's a little different. But I also realize and recognize that there's a set of people who still haven't had access to thinking about going to a Black school in the middle of a farm, right?
Mm-hmm.
An experience of going somewhere and what that means, what it represents, and to have, in some senses, the first time you have all Black teachers.
Right.
The first time you see a Black person running an enterprise, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We can't downplay the psychic importance of what those things mean.
Yeah. I mean, they even had an episode that basically was like, Dwayne Wayne's mans comes to visit him, or after graduated from Penn, and like them having this discussion about like, oh man, you need to really go to Penn so you can be ready for the real world, and like what you doing there is not the same, and then and then Dwayne, his character sort of asserting like, no, look, there's something actually important about here that you're detached from, right? Even with your the access and the opportunity that where you went to to further your education at. And the thing that the linkage for me was that like you whatever transitory space you go through, especially at that age in your life, you do in a sense create a bubble. You create a if you're in school, if you're going to college, especially if you're going to a real immersive college experience, your world is managed and swung around that experience. And I thought the show really captured that, like, this is your social network. These are the people you meet. Y'all have a lot of common overlapping interests. But you're also acknowledging that you're there for a time to make a transition, right? To learn something or to get your degree, and then, or whatever you're doing. Some people leave, they don't stay. It still isn't a guarantee that you're going to know what to do when you finish that. You know what I mean? Which is not unlike if you just, turn 18, you finish high school, and you're like, oh, I'm going to go, get a job and, see what happens with life. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to further school, or maybe I get a training program of some kind, whatever. You still have it's a window of, you figuring out where do you fit in the larger, or the, lack of a better word, the adult world. And, so it was sort of like the two had a parallel or a connection to me, because it's sort of a decision to leave, your wherever you're at, and take on this other world to get access, or to figure out, some set of skills or something that you want. But then just as a product, as a show, as something that depicted this aspect or piece of Black life, and made, I think, a pretty resonant, effort at, there's, some aspects, one could critique, or things I could have done without, in maybe in some larger scope. But the idea, like, this is a real part of life,
right,
for our community, right? That, like, you get in your early 20s, and some of us go to school, and you try to figure out what you're going to do, and you try to learn, and it's fraught with challenges and decisions. And then also that it is actually important, or it's good when media tells other stories, about your community, and how that, how that may have impacted how you see the world. So it was just, I think I may need to come back to it. I'm going to try to get through, like, the whole series, and then think about it some more. Because, so, that's all I had.
No, and I appreciate you for bringing it up. And like you said, I think it's a bubble, and I think it's a bubble that we develop. There is a developed, again, kind of talking about, like, the NBA. There's a shared vision to some degree, right? There's a shared vision that comes off of that you don't always get at a PWI, right? Like, there's sometimes PWI makes people who weren't aware of their Blackness really aware of their Blackness, right? Like, remember all the people we went to school with that weren't from Black places and became super blackity black when they got to campus?
Double black. They was black.
Super black.
I'm putting all the black on my Blackness right now.
They became goofy black. Not ultra black, goofy black when they got to campus. But there are people who undergo that awakening on those campuses. But I think that bubble, there's something to be said about a bubble, right? Mm-hmm. As much as a bubble can be a limit, a bubble can be a time for intense reflection, and intense understanding, and kind of, like, focus, right? So we usually use the word bubble in a negative way, but clearly what we've done in this podcast is use bubble in a positive way. So there you go, Jess.
Absolutely. Word up. Take the best part for yourself, America.
My man.
All right, word. Well, I think, we had the hour, so unless you guys something else, we're good at the order.
No, I think we're good. You know what I mean? And for the listening crew, folks who are listening, thank you. Number one. I know you're also checking out, Ask Your Oldhead. We got some other stuff coming your way, but as Just always say, and he says in the outro, please continue to share with people. If you like something, tell us about it. If you don't like us, tell us about it. DM us if you don't like it. If you like it, tell the world. If you don't like it, DM us.
I mean, unless you want me to argue with you in public. Because since you made it public, that's what we're gonna talk about it. We ain't gonna have no phone call.
Has no problem in doing. So let's just rather do it the other way.
Word up. Well, with that, I would say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, I'm Majestic. Thank you to you, the listener. since this recording, the weathered outcome or the real outcome of the NBA bubble, which started this conversation, props and love to the Los Angeles Lakers, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and all associated assorted folks. Nice to see people achieve a goal. And if you had any question about it, I am not one of those people that exists in the land of LeBron hate. So props to them, props to him. Way to close that thing out. On another note, if you want to continue to hear this podcast and support what we're doing, you can feel free to listen, share, subscribe, rate, all them things. Listen to it with a friend. Listen to it with an enemy. Shoot, I don't care. Somebody that you want to be with. Also, you can support the podcast and related creative works by finding us on Patreon. As a patron, you commit to a small monthly contribution that goes a long way in making this affordable for me to keep doing it. And by doing it, I mean the actual item cost, not so much the mental energy involved. I mean, that's a whole different level of support. But in anything, man, be safe out there, be well. This is an election season. Most everybody should be preparing to get your ballots. So please, if you're going to be engaged, be engaged. If you're not really going to be engaged, that's cool. Just do your thing. Don't dissuade others from finding and doing their thing. In any event, thank you for listening, and we'll be back with more. Peace.